Ladies and mostly gentlemen, today we're going to talk about everyone's favourite humanoid walrus race, the Tuskarr, and the pros and cons of these lovable tubby fellas becoming a new playable race in World of Warcraft. So much like our previous video on the Naga, we're going to cover some main key points of the potential ways that Blizzard could implement this race into the game. So the key points I'm going to cover are basic lore, customization, classes, starting zone, racial mounts, allegiances, and then a conclusion. So the basic lore of this race is pretty much this. According to Wikipedia, the Tuskarr are a kind-natured nomadic race that roams the southern coastlines of Northrend, guided by the carved Cyclopean statues that mark their seasonal fishing routes. The Tuskarr's tribal affiliation is evidenced by the marking inscribed on their tusks, and although they are a peaceful race, they are constantly bested by the Calvadir and an arctic race of murloc-like creatures known as the Gorlock. Yet even their enemies marvel at the Tuskarr's prowess and fearlessness in catching some of the most dangerous creatures in Northrend's frigid waters, including whales and giant squid. Not even the unnamed leviathans that lurk on the ocean depths are beyond the Tuskarr's reach. The Tuskarrs use giant turtle boats as transportation systems among the zones in Northrend. They lead the turtles by using a carrot on a fishing line. They also breed penguins as farm animals. According to Annie Bon, Tuskarr slaves apparently die only after a few days of leaving their climate. However, they have recently been spotted on the Darkmoon Isle and on Pandaria, stating that their new climate is going to work out great for them. So much like the Naga, the Tuskarr are very customizable in game. If you've ever used WoW Model Viewer, I'm sure you've put some gear on them and made your own out of it. So after injecting them into the game and replacing the Tauren, just for testing purposes, you can see that they look pretty badass in the character choice screen. If you didn't know, there isn't actually a model for the female Tuskarr, and when I select the female option, you just get the male version again. Unless the females have moustaches, which is entirely possible I guess. So when customizing your Tuskarr in-game, you have 4 different customization options. In-game, it says skin color, then 2 blanks, and facial hair. But the only one that's actually correct is skin color. What they actually are is skin color, facial hair, hair color, and tusk style. So let's look at skin color first. So for that, we have 7 different shades, ranging from your regular brown Tuskarr all the way to the violet Beauregard shade of purple. Obscure Willy Wonka references? Oh, we've got them. So next up is the facial hair option. And for this, we have 7 options again, all very unique and cool looking, even with a strange shaved Tuskarr, which looks kind of strange really, it doesn't really match up. So for the hair color choices, once again we have 7 options. There isn't really much to say about these, just a nice list of colours that you'd imagine your average Tuskarr to have as a natural hair colour. Nothing too wild and crazy. And finally, our final customization option is the tusks. For this, we have 7 options once again, ranging from no tusks, long tusks, short tusks, wise tusks, broken tusks, and the word tusk is starting to sound really weird. Although putting the no tusks with no facial hair does run into some strange model issues. So with the combination of skin tone, facial hair, hair colour, and tusks, you can really make your Tuskarr your own. Another thing is when you're changing the skin tone, the pattern on the tusk changes with it, which is awesome. So just a side note that all these customization options for these Tuskarr have been in the game since Wrath, so I wouldn't throw your tinfoil hat just yet, as none of these have been modified since their inclusion. Another point worth making is that these models can actually support all types of gear, apart from the head, boots and dresses. Regular pants work fine, but when equipping a dress, the shins go invisible for some reason, but that's not exactly something that's hard to fix. And when equipping a head, it just kind of hovers over the top of their head like some sort of weird flowing crown. Pretty funny stuff. And finally, jumping into a barber chair in-game actually also works as well. Apart from a few little interface errors, the options to recustomize your character work surprisingly well. Okay, so now let's talk about what classes these guys can be. According to Wikipedia, they can be druids, healers, hunters, rogues, shamans, sorcerers, spearmen, trapper, warrior, barbarian, expert, weird, fighter, lone wolf runesman, scout, and soldier. Looking at this list and looking at the 12 current available classes in World of Warcraft, I could picture your playable Tuskarr being able to be a druid. Now don't tell me you don't think this is the greatest combination of things since a gnome paladin. Just picture it now, having all your forms but with the addition of the awesome walrus tusks, kind of like a troll druid forms, and it's very easily done on Blizzard's part, and I'll be a massive fan of that. Hunters. Tuskarrs are natural born hunters, as from the lore description, this one writes itself. Maybe you have their starting pet being one of those sea lions or one of those rhinos that roam around the boring tundra. Rogues. Now this does seem like a very strange option as they don't look so sneaky, but there is actually a Tuskarr rogue in the Rogue Order Hall in Legion, and he's called Killgeo, and he sells some PvP items, so yeah. Tuskarr rogues are apparently a thing. Shaman. This is heavily mentioned as a main class for the Tuskarr in a couple of articles, so this is an obvious choice. Plus they look really freaking cool in Shaman tier sets. Warrior, this one's just standard, as there isn't any races that can't be warriors anymore. Mage, I can see this in one form or another. As they can be lone wolf runesmen and sorcerers, it doesn't seem like much of a stretch to be a full-blown mage. Monk, as they're listed as being able to be a fighter class, so I think it'll be a good fit. Also, people like to compare these guys to Pandarians, so I guess it kind of fits in that regard. And Priest, they're listed as being able to be a healer, so that's an obvious choice as well. So out of the rest of the classes, I couldn't see them being paladins. It just doesn't seem to work. I don't know, I just can't really explain it. It just doesn't seem like it'll be a good thing at all. Warlocks just seems weird to me, as they've never been mentioned to have any sort of connection to the Fel at all. Demon Hunters just seem super weird, and Death Knights, maybe, but they do hate the Scourge and everything it stands for, so I couldn't really see that happening realistically. Okay, so for the Tuskarr starting zone, the most obvious and best choice is obviously going to be Northrend, namely somewhere in the Borean Tundra, where you have all these awesome little Tuskarr civilizations on the eastern coast of the zone. Now a gleaming issue here is that Northrend is a level 70 plus zone, so having a level 1 Tuskarr running around kind of ruins the zone for other adventurers tackling Northrend for the first time. So here's my idea. Just like a hero class, you can have a sort of hero race. Basically, just have them start out at level 70, do a few story-heavy quests in a phased version of Cascala, and then when they're about 72ish, just send them on their merry way into the rest of Northrend to quest, level and dungeon with the rest of the players. Or, I guess they could create some sort of smaller island off the coast of Northrend where your low-level Tuskarr can level in peace. But personally, I would love to see a race that starts at level 70, but obviously you'd have to have some sort of prerequisite that you'd have to have at least another character at least at level 70 to create a Tuskarr. Or maybe you'd have to complete some awesome scenario which culminates in unlocking the new race, which is actually something that's never been done in game before. And honestly, I think it'd be great. At least then, you wouldn't have as many people making the effort to unlock, play and level the new race. You'd still have a lot of people, don't get me wrong, but I could see a lot of players with not much free time not making the effort to do the prerequisite for the new race. So let's briefly touch on racial mounts for the Tuskarr. Unlike the Naga, this model does actually support mounting and can very easily mount every mount in the game with no issues. As for a racial mount, I would have to go with a turtle, and yes, I know the Pandaren do already hold a claim to that racial mount, but I could see them using like the riding turtle model with maybe some more Tuskarr assets like a net for fishing or maybe one of those Tuskarr rucksacks that they wear. Beyond that, they could maybe ride a Tuskarr themed rhino mount or a mammoth, but I think a mammoth might be a bit of a stretch, as there are already so many different mammoth mounts in the game already. And finally, let's talk about their allegiances, and what my thoughts are on this race, whether they should join the Alliance or the Horde. So way back when Wrath was first announced by Blizzard, they made these nice little pages on their website highlighting some of the new zones in Northrend. On the Borean Tundra page, it says the following: shortly upon arriving, the Horde met the Tuskarr, a walrus-like race of nomadic fishermen. The two groups have since formed a bond, and the Horde have sworn to aid their new allies in any way possible. So obviously this does sway heavily towards a strand of Tuskarr becoming chummy with the Horde, but as of right now, in-game, the Tuskarr remain a neutral race. So my theory is that they should stay that way. Unlike the Pandas that have a choice, why not make them allied with both? These days as well, most players will have a high-level Horde and Alliance character. Obviously you'd have to put some sort of level of restriction on it, but I could see it being possible in some way, shape or form. For things like PvP, guilds and raiding, this could cause some issues, but I think the idea of it would be cool, but maybe not the execution. But if I had to choose a faction, I think they'd probably end up joining the Horde, or go down the Panda route and give the player a choice at the end of the starting experience. So in conclusion, do I want Tuskarrs as a playable race in World of Warcraft? Yes. Will it ever happen? Unfortunately not. I think with something like the Tuskarr, they should have pulled the trigger with this race when Wrath was live. Much like the Nightborn and the High Mountain Tauren, I think if Blizzard were gonna add these races or sub-races to the game, they should do it when they are relevant to the story. That's not to say that one day we may return to Northrend to take down Bolvar and the new Scourge, but that's not something in the immediate future of WoW. Another idea that I've been hearing is the idea of adding the Tuskarr as a sub-race to the Pandas. As interesting as that sounds, I don't think that's something that would make sense, as they are literally completely different races with completely different stories. So I hope you guys like this two-part mini-series going over the Naga and Tuskarr. So let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are on the Tuskarr. I know they can be quite a polarizing topic. Haha, get it? Polar, as in polar ice caps in Northrend. Anyway, also if you like the series and want it to become some sort of staple of the channel, smash that like button and let me know down in the comments what other races you'd like to see. So before I go, I want to give a massive thank you to my patrons and YouTube sponsors. Without them, this video probably wouldn't be possible. So leave a like if you liked it guys and subscribe if you're new. And with that, I'll see you next time.